Good morning, everybody, and good evening if you're joining us from the Indo-Pacific or elsewhere. My name is Vivek Chillicurry, and I lead the Technology and National Security Program at the Center for New American Security. And I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today for this virtual event on strengthening cyber partnerships in the Indo-Pacific. As people surely know, the cyber landscape in the Indo-Pacific has grown more varied, volatile, and dangerous than ever before. And left unchecked, rising cyber aggression from state actors, whether it's China, North Korea, Russia, and non-state actors, from hacktivists and hackers for hire, threaten to undermine the potential of what we're seeing as rapid digitalization and digital transformation in the region, and also impede aspirations that Washington and capitals across the region have for deeper economic, commercial, and military partnerships. In recent years, we've seen Beijing embrace a more ambitious or dangerous approach to its cyber doctrine, combining traditional tactics of espionage and data exfiltration with far more aggressive approaches in pre-positioning in critical infrastructure, more proactive disinformation, and other attacks on democracies in the region. And of course, Pyongyang in North Korea continues to wield its cyber operations to steal IP and fund its illicit weapons programs, including through brazen attacks against cryptocurrency platforms in recent years. And although Russia has historically been less active in the region, we would be remiss not to observe its alleged attacks against South Korea's 2018 Winter Olympic Games and the 2020 Tokyo Summer Games. And of course, capitals in the region have looked with concern at its aggressive cyber operations in Ukraine as potential preview of what could do should it choose to in the Indo-Pacific. And to examine how Washington and its Indo-Pacific partners in the face of this changing and increasingly dangerous cyber landscape are responding and how they can strengthen their cybersecurity and collective resilience, the Center for New American Security led a year-long research project that included field work and partnerships with think tanks in Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and the Philippines. And last month, we released a major report outlining several of our findings, and there's a lot in there. I encourage folks to take a look at it, and we'll discuss some of it today. But one of the major themes was that while Indo-Pacific countries in the region have made historic investments in cyber defense and have made massive and notable shifts in their cybersecurity postures and strategies, Washington and its partners in the region really need to pursue a more ambitious and proactive level of partnership and coordination to overcome some of the growing threats and potentially even deter some of the cyber aggression that I've described before. And so to discuss all of this and more, we have a terrific group of experts from the region that are going to be joining us, some of them very late in the evening for where they are, and we're very grateful for them for making the time. And we're going to hear from all of them in turn, and then we're going to open this up to a moderated discussion. So if folks online have questions, start thinking about them and sharing them, and we'll be sure to get to them at the end of the discussion. So we're going to start with an expert and affiliate with CNAS, Dr. Do-Yeon Kim, who is joining us from Seoul. She's an adjunct senior fellow of the Indo-Pacific Security Program at the Center for New American Security. Her expertise is wide-ranging and includes nuclear nonproliferation, East Asian geopolitics, U.S. nuclear policy and security issues. She's a columnist for the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist and a visiting professor at Yonsei University Graduate School of International Studies, among many other accolades and affiliations. But Dr. Kim, let's turn it over to you for the perspective from South Korea.
Thanks so much, Vivek, for having me share some thoughts and for that very generous introduction. I really wanted to congratulate you and the CNAS team for a very insightful and in-depth report, and also for a very successful workshop in Seoul when you and the team were out here a few months ago. The bottom line of my thoughts that I'd like to share today on the state of South Korea's cybersecurity is that they're saying all the right things. They have been for a couple or several administrations, and they're headed in the right direction. But, just as you had mentioned in your opening, more can always be done on policy. More proactive and ambitious actions can be taken, particularly in the areas of public-private cooperation, because as we all know, cyber is such a fast evolving space. Now, if I just share very briefly where things are right now today, most recently, on July 9th was Information Protection Day here in Korea. They designated the second Wednesday of every July to this Memorial Day since 2012 to raise awareness for cybersecurity threats and to promote information protection. And that's because the country experienced the DDoS crisis, the distributed denial service crisis on July 7th, 2009, in which a series of coordinated cyber attacks against websites of major government agencies, financial companies, and news media in both South Korea and the United States were targeted and hit badly. Researchers believe that North Korea was behind them, and future attacks have been attributed to North Korea's Lazarus group. So, North Korea is not only South Korea's top security threat because of its nuclear weapons, which it's known for globally, but it's also become South Korea's top cyber security threat as well. So, for this year's Information Protection Day, the new South Korean president, Lee Jae-myung, he was elected in June. He's a progressive. He vowed to strengthen South Korea's cyber resilience by raising information protection levels and fostering an environment in which information protection and technological innovation can coexist to contribute to economic growth. So really, they're really pinning innovation and economic growth together. Now, of course, it remains to be seen how this new government plans to fill in the details of this vision, but it seems keenly aware that cyber attacks are increasingly more sophisticated because of AI technologies in particular. President Lee's predecessor under a conservative administration had released a national cybersecurity strategy last year, and I know we'll talk more about this during the discussion, but South Korea went from a defensive posture since its 2019 strategy to an offensive posture last year when it released its most recent strategy. And so, this shift really mirrors the United States cyber strategy of defend forward. Last year's cybersecurity strategy, it set the development of offensive cyber defense and response capabilities as one of three primary objectives crucial to fulfilling its strategic vision of acting as a global pivotal state. And that was a mantra or a slogan of the previous administration. But nevertheless, South Korea had set forth some strategic tasks, and one of which is enhancing offensive cyber defense activities. Now, of course, because there is a change in government, we'll have to see, how and if they continue to implement the current strategy and create new ones for themselves. Also to bring us all up to speed, the United States and South Korea have an active working group to counter cyber threats posed by North Korea, again, because North Korea is South Korea's top security threat. So all in all, areas, can still be strengthened at home, especially with best practices on cybersecurity and digital hygiene. Now, these begin with the basics like multi-factor authentication and knowing how to keep devices secure. You'd be surprised, for a country that is so heavily wired like South Korea, these best practices are not actually practiced as widely as you would expect. And so I think, more can be done in that area. South Korean industry representatives have also voiced the need to expand private sector budgets and private sector role in the country's cybersecurity. Right now, cybersecurity is centralized with the government taking the lead. And some companies are even envious of the United States, where American tech companies can play a larger and often leading role in cybersecurity. And finally, there is a bit of a political component to cybersecurity policy here in South Korea. There's a reason why I specified which administration is progressive and conservative, and with North Korea and even China and Russia being the top cybersecurity threats. There is the political component really has to do with which side of the aisle leans in which direction when it comes to how so-called hard line they might be towards these three countries, or how sympathetic they might be towards, for example, North Korea or China. And so here again, that's something to watch to see if and how this new government here in South Korea will either explicitly call out North Korea or not, and also China. And so, I'll leave it there for now, and I'm happy to expand further during the discussion.
Great. Thanks so much, Dr. Kim. You raised several points, so I'd love for us to pick up later. I mean, one is that it's easy to forget, especially when you're sitting in Washington and there's a general bipartisan consensus about our conception of China as sort of a rising competitor and strategic adversary in cyberspace and other domains. But in the Indo-Pacific, of course, that relationship is much more complicated for a variety of reasons. And cyber policy and what people say publicly and do at a policy level is inseparable from that geopolitical context and the bilateral relationship with China, which is a very important point, and one of the, I think, challenges in some way to realizing a more ambitious collective approach. But we'll talk more about that later, and appreciate it. It's a good tee up for our next speaker, Mihoko Matsubara, who's joining us from Tokyo. For those who don't know, Mihoko is the chief cybersecurity strategist of the NTT Corporation. And prior to joining NTT, she worked as vice president and public sector security officer for Asia Pacific at Palo Alto Networks, a major U.S. cyber company. She also served at the Japanese Ministry of Defense and the Japanese government's cybersecurity R&D policy committee. She has many affiliations with think tanks, which is a testament to her thought leadership on cyberspace, not just in the Indo-Pacific, but generally. And she has a master's from the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies. So, Mihoko, over to you.
Thank you so much for your kind introduction, and hearty congratulations on your wonderful report to share your insights with the Indo-Pacific partners to strengthen our cyber resilience. So I have a slide, and okay. So thank you so much, Dr. Kim, for your insights to share. So now I'd like to share my Japanese perspective, and especially because that Japan recently enacted the active cyber defense legislations and how these legislations can help the Indo-Pacific partnerships on cybersecurity. So this legislation goes back to the 2022 Japanese National Security Strategy. This strategy aims to strengthen and improve Japanese defense capabilities by 2027, so in 5 years. Not only cybersecurity, but physical security, maritime security, space security, and so everything in all domains. But why 2027? So here's a background. So back in March 2021, Admiral Phil Davidson, then commanding officer of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, talked about the potential Taiwan contingency in 6 years. So this is now called Davidson window. And 1 year later, in February 2022, we saw that Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Now, Japanese government and Japanese public are increasingly concerned about potential conflict in this region. So this prompted Japan to increase our security capabilities, not only in cyber domain, but in all across the domains by 2027. Why? Because 2027 is Davidson window. But we have faced many other challenges, including a ransomware attack on the port of Nagoya, that is the largest commercial port in Japan, that paralyzed commercial cargo shipping for almost 2 days, even though it's remarkably fast to restart the operations of cargo shipping within the 3 days. And of course, now we face a Bo typhoon from China. So Bo typhoon is a Chinese state-sponsored actor to pre-position itself in the networks of critical infrastructure companies in water, power, energy, transportation, especially in the United States. But according to public reports, Bo Typhoon has already breached not only U.S. critical infrastructure companies, but also at least one Indian internet service provider, and also Singtel, a major Singapore-based telecom company. So Bo Typhoon hasn't been found in infections of any networks of critical infrastructure in Taiwan and in Japan. But according to multiple reports, including major tech companies, Bo Typhoon is believed to pre-position itself in the networks of critical infrastructure to suspend the operations of those critical infrastructure companies in the event of conflict in this region, to create an havoc, create an chaos, and also deter the deployment of U.S. forces, and also delay the decision-making processes. If that's the case, and Bo Typhoon should be also already in the networks of Japanese and Taiwanese critical infrastructure companies. So Cisco Taros published a very intriguing blog in March 2025. So Cisco Taros found that a Chinese state-sponsored actor, UAT 5918, already breached into Taiwanese telecommunication companies, healthcare, IT, and other critical infrastructure companies. And Cisco Taros also added that the UAT 5918, the tactics and also targets are quite similar to that of Bo Typhoon. So General Paul Nakasone is a former commanding officer of U.S. Cyber Command and also former director of the National Security Agency. So he recently answered interview request from the Okinawan TV program in March 2025. So in that interview, he referred to Bo Typhoon cyber attacks, and he also warned that he believes that the Bo Typhoon might be already in the network of Okinawan critical infrastructure companies. So that is why we Japanese should be also very careful and actively look for the traces of Bo Typhoon. So the active cyber defense legislation was passed at the Japanese upper house in May 2025. And at the same time, Japanese government also enacted the revised bill of Economic Security Promotion Act to expand the security clearance system beyond the boundary of traditional defense community, meaning that if you are involved in industries economic security, you will be entitled to obtain security clearance. That will also cover cybersecurity. So even though the active cyber defense legislation only was passed only 2 months ago, but the Japanese government already started to do the process to fully operationalize the capabilities, including the launch of National Cybersecurity Office in July 2025. And also, they plans to expand the Self-Defense Forces Cyber Force from 2,400 members to 4,000 members in 2 years. So what active cyber defense legislation means for the future Indo-Pacific partnerships on cybersecurity? Of course, it's the beginning of the long journey for Japan to fully operationalize our capabilities. But again, because we enacted the ACD registration and also the expansion of security clearance systems, so it means that Japanese critical infrastructure companies that also able to provide variable intelligence to the government, not only in Japan, but also with other countries, as long as that those security clearance systems in the different countries are mutually acknowledged. So it means that not only the Japanese government, but also Japanese critical infrastructure companies now provide the contribute to the cyber resilience by providing Japan-owned the actionable cyber intelligence. But we also should be mindful that cybersecurity is not just the virtual domain, because cybersecurity can only exist based upon the physical security, like cables and hardware and the submarine cables. So no cable, no communication, no cybersecurity. And because Japan and Taiwan are the archipelago or islands, and we are totally different situation compared to the United States or Ukraine. So we should keep learning lessons from the ongoing war in Ukraine, but we also should be create and learn our own lessons, and we should willingly share our own lessons with the rest of the world, including the active cyber defense. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Mihoko. And again, a lot of terrific points to pick up there. I mean, the discussion about pre-positioning, I think, underscores something that I'm not sure people who aren't closely tracking cyber issues fully appreciate, which is that the lines have really blurred between what we understand to be sort of the traditional hard military discussion on the one hand and sort of the cyber discussion on the other hand. The point, as you mentioned, Mihoko, about pre-positioning is that the idea, at least, is that Beijing is trying to create disruption and internal distractions in the United States and other partners in the region should, and God forbid, should we ever need to respond to a cross-strait crisis. And that is a specific military objective, not just a matter of data and espionage and other issues. And your point about cybersecurity relying on physical security and physical infrastructure is very well taken. And, we've done some research for a separate project on sort of China's digital Silk Road, which in the Indo-Pacific, takes the form of not just subsea cables, but telecommunications networks that are terrestrial and other digital services. And if people are interested, they can look at some of our work there separately. But your discussion teed us up very well for our next speaker, who's from Taiwan, and can provide the perspective of another country that has certainly been in the crosshairs of rising cyber aggression in the region. And this is Dr. Teng Wei-chung. He is the professor and chairman of the Department of Computer Science and Information Engineering at National Taiwan University of Science and Technology. He served as a commissioner in Taiwan's National Communications Commission from 2018 to 2022, where he focused on 5G frequency band auctions and regulations related to 5G. And he holds a BS and MS degree from National Chiao Tung University in Taiwan and received his doctorate in engineering from the University of Tokyo. So Dr. Teng, we'll turn it over to you, and thank you for joining us.
Okay, thank you, Vivek, for having me to this event. And I am very honored to have this opportunity to discuss with you regarding the cyber threat happening in Indo-Pacific region. And most of the time, my primary job is to do teaching in university. And in the same time, I also lead the headquarters of a project called Taiwan Academic Cybersecurity Center. But in the past 3 years, I have the opportunity to join the committee in National Science and Technology Council. So I do have the chance to review many projects of the many minister, including MODA, Ministry of Digital Affairs. So I will talk about something I know regarding the recent progress in cyber resilience of Taiwan. So first of all, I believe that most of you are aware that the for the past 3 years, there are several submarine cable got cut connecting Taiwan and its island, including Hong Kong and another small island called Mazu. So it happened like 5 times for past 2 years, and that kind of a situation make Taiwanese government to start to consider very serious about the cyber resilience when someday the 4 landing spot got paralyzed, and over 90% of the outbound connection are cut off. And how we'll do. So for the past 2 years, MODA has established 7 hotspots in the whole Taiwan island, and due to the budget cut, currently we have only like 20 dozens of the satellite terminal activated. And in the meantime, Taiwan also introduced the LEO, the low Earth orbit satellite service, the OneWeb, and also MEO, SES satellite service as our backup backbone. And one thing I consider that is worthy to mention is that for the 2 weeks ago, there is a typhoon called Danas. This typhoon hit Taiwan with the record-breaking winds, and it caused more than 500,000 of households suffer 1 to 3 days of power outage, and during that 3 days, many people was not able to call. And however, and in that time, this is the first time that the Zhonghua Telecom, the biggest telecom company in Taiwan, sent its 24 VSAT vehicle to the southern area, disaster area, and since this vehicle has satellite communication as a backbone, so at least the people living there are able to text and to have a phone call with a friend and the relatives. So I consider that this is also the very good opportunity for the government and the third party and the private sector, the telecom industry, to cooperate and do the real exercises on the immediate responding to crisis. And another thing I would like to mention is that another focus of current Taiwanese government is a critical infrastructure service provider. So there is a government bureau called NCIS, the National Cyber Security Institute. So, so this institute just granted to launch a 3-year project, and in this 3 years project, the NCIS will build up a team called OTEX team, OTEX. It's not abbreviation of OpenText, but the Operation Technology Exercises team. And the purpose of this team is to periodically or unperiodically evaluate the cyber resilience of the current critical infrastructure service provider, and to detect and to evaluate are the OT, the operation technology. The system is resilient enough to the new types of cyber attacks, and also for in the present Taiwan era. The slogan of Taiwanese government is that the cybersecurity is national security. However, for the present for present Tsai, and I'm sorry, for present Lai, the current president, we now focus more on supply chain cyber security. So many, as far as I know, that many government project is launched this year, and to make sure that the chips we imported are trustworthy and not replaced by China. So that's basically some of the facts I know, and I will need to discuss more in the later part of this session. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Professor Tang. And I think your point underscores once again an earlier theme, which is that cybersecurity and physical security intersect in ways that we don't often appreciate. And supply chains, physical infrastructure, whether it's for chips or radio antennas or core parts of key ICT infrastructure, is essential to make sure they come from trusted vendors. And that's certainly an issue that's ripe for our next speaker and last from the Philippines to round out our discussion. And so let's turn now to Dr. Sherwin Ona, who's a professor of political science and development studies at De La Salle University. He is also the chairperson of the department and the former associate dean for research and advanced studies of the College of Computer Studies at De La Salle University as well. And he previously served as a consultant to several Philippine government agencies, including the Commission on Information and Communications Technology and the Department of Information and Communications Technology, and has other accolades and affiliations that people can read if they're curious. But suffice to say, he's a foremost expert in Philippine cybersecurity issues, and we're happy to turn it over to him now to round out our discussion before we jump into a moderated part of this event.
Thank you, Vivek, for that kind introduction. Allow me to thank you and your team at CNAS for this invitation. I also would like to greet my fellow panelists and congratulate you for your insightful presentation. If I may, I'll now share my slide. All right. So when I got this invitation, of course, the invitation said that, to present some cyber issues regarding the Philippines. But for my case, I chose to focus on the issue of human resource, or building or developing human resources for cyber defense. You might say, that's a given, right? For any country who is building or who is upgrading its cyber capabilities, human resources is, of course, one of the major pillars of this effort, right? Yes, you're correct. But for the Philippines, it's kind of different. Different in a way because we're starting practically from scratch, and as a small economy, we're learning bit by bit the price of being complacent throughout the years. Now, my next slide will tell you some specifics. Let's wait for the transition of the slide. Oh, there you go. Okay, sorry for that. In this slide, Vivek failed to mention that I lecture at the National Defense College and Public Safety College of the Philippines, and these are for police and military personnel. And in those lectures, I always ask the question, are we at war? And usually I get some frowns, and some of them, of course, agree, some would disagree. And I often say that, guys, you cannot frame what's happening now in the context of World War I, World War II. This is a different time. We're talking of artificial intelligence here. We're talking of cyberspace. We're talking of space. Indeed, there are some parallels, similarities with what happened before, but we are in a different environment right now. And I always tell them that, guys, look at the numbers. Since 2023, we have experienced a significant increase in cyber attacks, 300% increase since 2023. And most of these attacks are targeting government and educational institutions. Quite surprising. And my slide will show you the percentage distribution of the type of attacks that we are experiencing. But one of the significant cases that happened is in 2023 up to 2024, where Bloomberg reported that Mustang Panda, it's a Chinese APT group, hacked the armed forces of the Philippines and the office of the president. This is a 2-year hacking operation. Of course, it was uncovered, but I think it's a little bit too late already. But it goes to show you the vulnerability that our institutions are being subject to, given the ferocity of these attacks. Of course, whenever we discuss the idea of cyber, we always attach the idea of influence operation and disinformation campaigns. We see this as a byproduct of the overall cyber assault against the Philippines. Malign influence operations, for example, the entry of gaming organizations, exploitation of our civil and immigration systems, the proliferation of deepfakes, for instance, are all part of the same playbook that we are experiencing. And I hate to say this, but the same playbook that Taiwan is experiencing. I've been a Taiwan fellow last year, and I observe how these things are being done. And unfortunately, it's very similar to what Taiwan is experiencing. Of course, cybercrime is not something to be neglected. We have, again, triple the amount of cyber crimes from 2023. So more or less, you can see that this is indeed a deliberate and very organized effort. Offensive cyber coupled with disinformation and malign influence operations. Now, for those of us who are working at the national security, law enforcement, and public safety sector, we often see this as a continuing aggression that is connected with what is happening in what we call the West Philippine Sea. This is part of the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. And probably you've heard of this. We have experienced a lot of belligerent actions from the People's Republic of China, water cannon, laser pointing, you name it. And of course, we often connect the offensive cyber operations, disinformation, and other cyber crimes to our problems in our maritime domain. This also highlights the vulnerability of our critical infrastructure. Securing critical infrastructure is a new thing for the Philippines. This has been like in discussions like for the past 2 years only or 3 years. We also have a very robust business process outsourcing sector, which 70% of these companies are servicing American clients. So definitely we have this huge vulnerability. Now, my fellow panelists discuss the importance of policy. I couldn't agree more, guys. This is very important. The Philippines, I can clearly tell you that we're at the nascent stage of our regulatory frameworks. We just approved our national cybersecurity plan last year, middle of last year. We have formed an interagency task force on cyber, which has met only once since its conception. And of course, I always point out that you can go all out on cybersecurity, but if you do not have baselines, if you have laws that are inadequately implemented, then it undermines the overall effort. And if you talk to government officials in the Philippines, they will tell you that there is a need for a dedicated cyber agency, very much like what the US is doing, CISA, for example. Now, my presentation tends to highlight the human resource component, right? We are severely what do you call this? There's severe gap in this sector or in this pillar of cybersecurity or cyber defense. My slide will tell you that we have only 200 certified cyber professionals, and majority of them are working abroad. We have yet to mainstream a digital competency framework. Can you just imagine how we cannot define what competencies we need for our digital transformation and even for our cyber initiatives? So this is a challenge for us, and of course, this is a point of opportunity as well that we can share with our allies and partners. Cyber security professional pay is quite low in the Philippines, $500 to $700 a month, depending on the type of employment that you have. Some of them are contractual, only 6 months, especially if you're working with government. It's a little bit higher in the private sector. But that goes to show you the disparity between public sector and the private sector. Of course, there is this challenge on awareness. We need to mainstream a cyber culture. And unfortunately, when you talk to many here in the Philippines, especially in the private sector and perhaps also in the public sector, there is still a technocentric view when it comes to cyber, meaning they treat cyber as merely procurement of hardware and software. So when we talk about cyber, we try to educate them to adopt a broader view on this concept. Now, moving forward to my last slide, these are what I think are the way forward, meaning talking with our allies, partners, both private and the public sector. I see this as the possible cooperation points. For instance, adopting, for example, a socio-technical view on cyber. This means that the national security, organizational, technical, and the individual side of cyber should be integrated as one. And I think this can be a conversation that we can have with our allies. Of course, the adoption of standards is another thing for us. Unfortunately, we do not have a common standard for our cyber, meaning that the government does not prescribe a common standard for our cyber, especially in the public sector. In the private sector, they have, but for the public, that's still in the works. I have here this vision of having Filipinos as cyber warriors. I think this is where cooperation can really happen. If we can have, for example, industry and academic linkages, both at the local and international level. We can also identify technical and non-technical tracks, specialization. Executive education in cyber is almost non-existent. I can only cite one, which the one I'm developing for our public safety college. But aside from that, executive education is purely on the technocentric side. I also have here civil military fusion must be normalized. There should be a merging of heads when it comes to cyber, especially coming from our civilians and of course from our military. And of course, definition of cyber competencies. Again, it's a challenge, but again, this is another opportunity that we can both develop with our partners and allies. And lastly, the idea of developing centers of excellence. We have yet to move on this, but I can see this as a possible opportunity, especially for international partners. International universities, foreign universities can have this partnership with the Philippines to develop not only degree courses, but also short-term courses like certificates and even shared electives, which we can give online. I think that's it for me, Vivek, and thank you very much again for the opportunity to present.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Rona. A great way to round out our presentations here. And I appreciate your emphasis on solutions for the way forward. It's a good way to tee up the time we have left for discussion. I think, your point about cyber warriors aligns a lot with what Japan is doing with its Japanese self-defense forces and their efforts to expand it. And I actually want to pick up on this point about workforce because it's a theme that surfaced in our report for all 4 countries, and the United States, of course, has plenty of cyber workforce challenges of our own. And I think generally, we don't mean in this report to suggest that the United States has this all figured out. Quite the opposite. In many ways, we have a lot to learn from approaches that countries in the region have taken for their cyber frameworks. But on cyber workforce specifically, I'll open this up to the group if anybody wants to take it. What has worked in terms of partnering with the private sector, partnering with academia to close the cyber workforce gap? Because as Dr. Ona mentioned, in the Philippines, there's just 200 highly certified professionals, which is a pretty extraordinary statistic in a country that large and important as a security partner. I don't know. And also people have speculated about, okay, it's not realistic to actually train all of these people in the short term. Maybe AI can help close the gap and remedy some of these shortages. I don't know if anyone has any perspectives on what's working or in their countries or ideas they have for the way forward to close cyber workforce gaps that they face. Happy to direct it to somebody. Mihoko, I don't know if you want to take that. I know Japan has been doing a lot.
Sure. So thank you for your question. So I think that to increase the number of skilled cybersecurity professionals, or to close the gap of cybersecurity manpower, I think it would be better to have a specific deadline and goal to achieve. Because we can always say that, we are shortage of like tens of thousands of cybersecurity professionals, or like now 4,000 cybersecurity professionals, but that's only the number. It doesn't necessarily mean that these number of people have this specific skill sets, and these people do not have those skill sets. Also, in the Japanese case, because Tokyo was selected to host the Tokyo 2020 Summer Olympic and Paralympic Games in September 2013, that's the moment for Japanese academia, Japanese industry, and Japanese government to increase the national cybersecurity capabilities by 2020. Because we know that we are increasing the number of IT assets to protect, and also the cyber attacks, and then at least the number of detected cyber attacks are always increasing or skyrocketing. And we are facing not only the state-sponsored actors' cyber attacks, but also cyber criminal activities targeting Japan. And whenever you have a big national event, the number will go up. So that is why the Japanese government and industry and academia need the moments to not only to just increase the number of cybersecurity professionals, but also we set the specific deadline and the goals to achieve. And also it also prompted Japan to create sector-specific public-private partnerships, like to share the actionable cyber threat intelligence. And also now we saw that the invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, and also the geopolitical tensions all over the world. So I think that these are also helping Japan to enhance the national cybersecurity capabilities and also the manpower.
Great. Does anybody else want to jump into that question? I can even broaden it a little bit because I know that others have mentioned, like Duyun, for example, maybe I'll come to you on this, the challenge not only of workforce issues, but cyber hygiene generally, and how often in government and the private sector, and Dr. Ona mentioned this as well, that, there's maybe a technocentric, I think is the term he used, view for this, which is the cybersecurity folks are in a basement and they're worried about procurement and, an occasional training if it does happen, but it's not sort of suffused throughout an agency or a company in terms of a top of the line priority for operational security and resilience generally. So, I guess maybe Duyun, can you provide some perspective on what the workforce and cyber hygiene challenges look like in South Korea and what has worked or hasn't worked going forward?
Yeah, so I think with as our co-panelists have mentioned, and even you, Vivek, the workforce issue is also seen to be a critical issue here in South Korea. And also, as I briefly mentioned in my opening, there have been industry representatives who say that there needs to be more public-private partnerships to combat and to combat cybersecurity, not only combat threats, but to also take preventive measures. But cybersecurity policy and practices are really centralized by the government, and especially they've gone through some institutional organizational changes in the past administration here, and so it's a lot of it is really centralized within the presidential office, for example, and everyone takes a cue from there. And so there have been discussions, points raised here in South Korea that there needs to be more coordination between specifically the military and intelligence and law enforcement and civilian actors. And there's a lot of discussion here about there needs to be clear jurisdiction between the different agencies that handle cybersecurity. But to your other question about hygiene, whether it's data, digital hygiene, device hygiene, this is something where I think the government has done promotional and campaigns, awareness campaigns about best practices for cybersecurity, but also device and digital hygiene. But frankly, it still remains to be very, I guess, I don't know if niche is the right word, but targeting only a very small number of people, maybe perhaps a very small number of people in the discipline or the sector, the cybersecurity world of South Korea, and that's actually quite small. And it hasn't really diffused across the nation. It especially, even among whether they're political scientists or security experts, like research, like hard security researchers, experts. I hear a lot of anecdotes about how, some personal cell phone, smartphones will be taken to countries like China and Russia and others on work trips or even on vacation, for example. And so things like that. And even, I hear from even private sector companies, not necessarily dealing with cybersecurity, but when it comes to laptops and computers and, being able to secure those. And so I think a lot of this, South Korea is a land of convenience. I think everybody enjoys convenience, and taking these extra measures is not convenient, but also I think it's an issue of awareness too, and knowledge. And there needs to be a very proactive educational awareness campaign across the sector, because, again, North Korea is not the only cybersecurity threat in this nation or in the Indo-Pacific. Of course, it's the state-backed entities by China and Russia as well. And so there are three big state-backed security threats in the region. And so I think really honest to a public level, civilian level, there really needs to be more awareness there.
Great, thank you. I couldn't agree more. And I mean, the private sector has come up a lot as a theme from everybody's presentations, and I think obviously there's a concentration of expertise in the private sector that the government doesn't always have, but I think that also comes with a concentration of responsibility. And at least from the United States perspective, we've and at least in the past administration, have been emphasizing these concepts of secure by design and secure by default, such that vendors of ICT software and hardware shouldn't be putting the onus entirely on users to go into the defaults and the guts of a system and change all the settings to maximize cybersecurity. They should be oriented towards security from the beginning as a default. And I think that's, exploring versions of that in across the Indo-Pacific would be a useful step forward in that direction. And Dr. Tang, I wanted to come to you on this question of partnerships with the private sector. And, Taipei has initiated a 4-year, $40 million move to transition a lot of its government services to the cloud. And one of the reasons for that is because people worry that in the case of a cross-strait crisis that, if all this data is physically on premises in the country, there could be issues like we saw potentially in Ukraine before it was all moved out of the country. what is the role of the private sector? And others are welcome to jump in here too, right? Like where has partnership with the private sector worked? Where are there opportunities for improvement? What do you think is the right balance of responsibility between government and the private sector in defending cyberspace against what are sort of increasing security and state threats?
Okay, that's really a good question, and your question, in fact, partially matched the first part of what I mentioned about the threat, the physical threat to submarine cable. Since our government tried to export our part of the service to the cloud outside Taiwan, so yes, it is extremely important to make sure that when crises happen, we still have the access to the fundamental service via satellite communication. And as far as I know, the ministry in Taiwan who is in charge of the IT bill is Minister of Digital Affairs, aka MODA. And currently, what I know is that what MODA did is very simple. They just hired Cloudflare as their backbone. And however, to extend the cyber resiliency of the Taiwan island, there's something I would like to mention. Is that the talent is getting ready. It's because that 5 years ago, when the Cybersecurity Management Act started in Taiwan, there are not enough number of cybersecurity team in both government and also in most of the private company. And 3 years ago, the Taiwanese government asked every company in stock market has to hire CISO and cybersecurity team for their cybersecurity, and also the government, all the central government and the local government need to have the same equipment. So there is no so many people under knowing the cybersecurity. And I want to mention an example is that starting from year 2021, the Ministry of Education allocated 80 number of spatial code. As long as any university hired new professor of the cybersecurity field, they got double salary. And the 4 years passed, there are only 21 new professor hired, because it is even double the salary if you go to the private sector. So however, we somehow managed to have a project to which leveraging all cybersecurity professor in the whole nation to start to train. And we ask the industry talent to join. So currently, we are able to increase in like 300 more industry-ready talent each year, and another 600 from university each year. And I believe that this kind of collaboration between the university, the government, and the cybersecurity industry is filling the gap of the talent of cybersecurity.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Tang. I know we're at time, and I know it's late for everybody. If people will indulge me, I might want to ask one quick popcorn question to everyone in the panel, and I'll start with you, Dr. Ona, just to warn you. and then maybe we'll go in sort of the order of the presentations. The focus of this discussion is partnerships, right? And one of the things we haven't really talked about that I would like to get people's quick view on is, when you think about opportunities or gaps in strengthening partnerships, not only with Washington, but also with other governments in the region and companies in the United States in the region to strengthen cyber resilience in your country. What is your wish list? What do you want to see from the United States and maybe others in the region? And just a quick answer, so 30 seconds if you can do it, that'd be great. Dr. Ona, go for it.
Thanks, Vivek. Go beyond the technocentric paradigm. There's a lot to do in cyber. I agree with Professor Kim and Nihoko about doing a roadmap and involving the private sector. But at the end of the day, these partnerships must encourage leadership from the part of the public sector, from the part of government. And in the Philippines, this is very important, so that all of these sectors can see that this is more than just a market concern. This is a national security concern, and we're under threat now. And there is a need to elevate this level away from or above the market-oriented view. That's it for me, Vivek. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Short and sweet. Thank you, Dr. Ona. Mihoko, why don't we turn to you, and then, Duyun, then Mihoko, then we'll close out with Dr. Tang.
So I'm going to be really ambitious because I really think we should set ambitious goals here. So first, I'll give you three. First is, together with the United States and like-minded countries, enhancing resilience and response speed, denying adversaries operational success, and creating costs for a state-sponsored cybercrime and espionage. And I know this is a high bar, but I think we should aim there.
Great. And to be a total shill for CNAS, we wrote some suggestions in our report to that effect. So I hope people check it out. Mihoko, please go ahead.
I think to have a productive partnerships in the region, we need to have a mutually respectful and also fulfilling information sharing. So not just a one way forward, and it must be two ways. And also, if there's only anyone's to be like a bandwagons to be a free rider, it will destroy the partnerships. And also like a condescending, the one country is to teach and the others that to follow doesn't work. We have to share. Maybe we do not necessarily have the exact same level of intelligence from the beginning, but we can always share our trials and errors. Thank you.
Completely agree. It's partnership, not patronizing. Great. Dr. Tang, please go ahead.
Yeah, basically the same with Mr. Masbala. And but for the short term, I would like to make sure the safety of the Taiwan threat, especially the submarine cable, because communication is the key for the safety of Taiwan. And for the long term, yes, I would appreciate, and in fact, I'm doing is to build up the collaboration, including the research project and also the talent training for the mutual benefit. That's it. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for staying brief in the final questions. I know it's very late for those, some of us are just starting our day here in Washington, but the rest of you are ending a very long day in the region. So we're grateful for your time. And I think, we've covered so much ground. There's, I think the range of topics that came up, from workforce to digital infrastructure to national security policy to cyber hygiene, speak to the breadth of the challenge and the opportunity that governments in the region all have in the days ahead. And, we are sort of at this intersection of dramatically rising cyber threats, whether it's the attack at Port Nagoya, the rise in disinformation ahead of the recent Taiwanese election, to the maritime coinciding attacks that Dr. Ona talked about in the Philippines, to the ongoing threats to South Korea from North Korea and others, huge workforce gaps, digital infrastructure underinvestment. There's a lot of work to do, and there's no way that all of these countries can do it on their own. And it's going to take far more ambition and far more partnership and a lot more, I think, solutions-oriented discussions like this. So we're grateful to everybody for joining us. And I apologize to our viewers. I abused my moderator's prerogative and went over time and asked all the questions, but hopefully we'll have future opportunities for you to do so. Thank you so much, everybody, and please stay tuned for more from CNAS.